Well, without the World's Fair, I don't know what Spokane would be today.
I think it made Spokane.
Expo was such an event with hope.
It was the early 1970s, and not everyone thought Spokane could host the World's Fair and Expo.
There's no way Spokane could handle something like that. Or just in my mind, I thought, this is unbelievable.
But there were a few who did believe and fought and won to bring the World's Fair right here to Spokane. Now, 50 years later, we celebrate that effort, the event, and the legacy that lives on. It all happened right here where we're standing 50 years ago. In fact, when they started planning the World's Fair, there was no park. So when it came in 1974, it literally changed the landscape of downtown Spokane, and it changed the city's future forever.
From Spokane, USA, Expo 74 presents the World's Fair.
As we celebrate 50 years since 1974 and the World's Fair, it's really hard to imagine what it would have been like had that never happened. However, it was almost inconceivable at the time that the World's Fair would come to Spokane, a fairly small town, and invite millions of people to attend.
Expo 74 and the state of Washington have been greatly enhanced in the eyes of the world.
It is estimated that nearly 5.6 million people came here to downtown Spokane to celebrate the World's Fair in 1974. And of course, at the center of it, a river, which at the time prior to the fair was covered in railroad tracks and rail stations. However, during the couple of years leading up to the fair, it transformed downtown and created the jewel that's known as Riverfront Park.
It is one of the amazing miracles of the World's Fair, that park, that downtown park. There were two levels of railroad that went right down what was now called Spokane Falls Boulevard, which was then Trent Avenue. Two levels of railroad, two railroad stations, and it totally blocked off the river from the core of the city. When people went shopping downtown, they didn't know that there was a river running through Spokane. Hardly.
The park became a focus because it would eventually become a world stage. So it begs the question, how did a fairly small town that was covered in a railroad yard become the venue of the largest party in the world? Simply put, before the visitors and the vendors, there was vision, a small group of people that simply believed, and they refused to fail. At a front row seat was Hope Fulweiler. She worked at the city manager's office here in downtown Spokane at the time, and she can recall when the talk turned to action.
The council and whoever knew that it was a possibility came and used our conference room about 1971, maybe 1970, to talk about the possibilities. They decided they wanted to do it, and thank goodness they did, because it just kind of made Spokane.
As you might imagine, the planning was intense and arduous to put on a World's Fair, and not everyone was happy with the changes that were going on because of it. KREM 2's Cody Proctor takes a look at what it took to make the World's Fair and Expo happen here in downtown Spokane.
There's nothing quite like a Spokane spring at Riverfront Park.
All around Riverfront Park are reminders, remnants, such as the pavilion of a major event that brought the world right to Spokane's front door.
So let's rewind to the film, back to 1974, back
The World's Fair.
to one of Spokane's first boomtowns.
I always refer to Expo as one of the two big moments in Spokane's kind of landscape history. The first being the fire in 1889, which burns down the entire downtown core, and the second being the fair.
In my mind, I thought, Spokane and a World's Fair? There's no way.
Looking at Spokane's downtown landscape at the time, the doubts aren't surprising. Before 1972, a tapestry of train tracks and two levels of trestles weaved across where Riverfront Park now sits.
You didn't know the river was there unless you went to the bank of it to see it.
According to Anna Harbine, who works as a Johnston Fix curator of archives and special collections at the MAC, Fulweiler wasn't the only skeptic.
When King Cole would bring it up, people would just kind of laugh at him and be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Sure.
But after getting the bid from the Bureau of International Expositions, the real work began, from getting the money.
They kept trying to pass a levy and a bond, and these bond issues kept failing.
To getting the land. Mike Koblick, who worked as the director of performing and visual arts for Expo 74, says the biggest miracle turned out to be the railroads leaving the area years before they had to.
They moved at their expense off of that property and donated that property to the city to become a park.
Construction began in 1972, but change isn't always good. In the process of building the fairgrounds, Trent Alley, a cultural hub for Spokane's international community, came down.
That area had started to flourish in the 1920s with Japanese and Chinese businesses, and there's no remnants of those. They were all torn down and turned into parking lots.
For an expo focused on environmental sustainability, concerns about the environment came up.
There were a lot of skeptics around, is this actually going to be environmentally good, or are you just using this to sell a bunch of tchotchkes?
But time and construction marched on until May 4th, 1974 arrived, when the World's Fair opened to a crowd of 85,000.
85,000 people celebrating the opening of the World's Fair. Well, those crowds are certainly gone at this point, but the impact of what happened during the World's Fair, that lives on.
We knew it was going to be great, and it was. It turned out to be an amazing 6 months for Spokane.
It just was a real chance of a lifetime.
It was a hodgepodge of intense cultural hors d'oeuvres.
I felt a blessing because the world came to me.
Share your stories and become part of the Expo 74 Memory Share collection in the Jolie Ferris Archives at the MAC. Use the QR code or log on to the Expo 74 Memory Share website.
Spokane, for me, started with Expo, and it's just been a theme that's always there. In the back of your mind, letting you know this was a cool place, and it could be cool again. This is the only butterfly left standing. I was just the person that was asking questions and letting the city know that it's important to the people of Spokane, that there's lots of fans of this structure here, and it's also an iconic visual of our city. I thought it was time to start asking questions about how are they going to make this right and bring them back and give them back their role in the park.
Restoring our butterfly to its rightful place at Riverfront Park.
I've always thought that when you think of Spokane art images and symbols, you always see the pavilion and the clock tower and the garbage chute. And I have always thought that the butterfly needs to be in that group, so that when you see its image, you know it's a Spokane thing. People were often wondering, why is it shaped so mid-century modern and not looking like an actual butterfly? It's based off of the Expo Mobius shape itself. If you take one half of the Expo Mobius and then flip it over, that's the butterfly. What's important about the butterfly is that it's a symbol of rebirth and reinventing. And Spokane's gone through so many butterfly and cocoon moments and reinvented it itself over the decades. It's the perfect symbol for Spokane, and we should absolutely keep it.
As we mentioned a little bit earlier, not everyone was thrilled with the planning of Expo 74. KREM 2's Channing Curtis takes a look at how one of the most popular exhibits almost got left out.
My great-grandmother told a story about how the Spokanes came to live in the city of Spokane.
The
Spokane tribe's creation story is more than just a legend passed down through generations. It explains why the river, the salmon, and the land are so important to the tribe.
He kwento and look pula lia stuliu uyahets mukmok.
Today, you have geologists and scientists that verify our oral history from 10,000 years ago.
Quent heads in deep me. Flu heads so seal now quiquayut heads ya stem.
And it's why tribal members were so upset that they weren't included in the original plans for Expo 74.
This is our river. This was our homeland.
Quent heads turturei, heads u wechinti, heads di pacey, hoi per flust uliu.
Margot Hill was 6 when she heard her great-grandmother tell the creation story at Expo 74.
My great-grandmother, Sadie Boyd, lived to be 103, but at Expo she was 90. And she spoke and she told the history of the Spokane area from 1910.
Yet at so, mis tutui u mishashutum, chitsinawau u chich and chkulsum.
50 years later, you're listening to Margot's son and Sadie's great-great-grandson, Craig, tell that same story.
You
know, tribes were an afterthought unfortunately, for the King Cole and the organizers 50 years ago. But I can tell you that our tribal pavilion and the native village was one of the most visited villages of all the Expo events.
The Spokane tribe had to take their fight all the way to Washington, D.C. Finally, then Senator Warren Magnuson stepped in, paving the way for the tribes to exhibit their heritage on their native land.
We
had to fight to have participation. You know, we were part of the Folk Life Festival, and at 100 acres, you know, we had to fight like heck.
The Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, and Kalispell tribes came together to create the Native Village to showcase the variety in all of our Northwest tribes.
There's Plains, American Indian, there's Plateau, we're Interior Salish Plateau, and Coastal. And so we wanted to represent all the tribal cultures. I just remember the war dances and the drumming and the songs that we shared at that time.
The original caretakers of the land, showing the world what it truly means to celebrate tomorrow's fresh new environment.
As Indigenous people, we live with the environment and with the salmon. The tribes had been living with nature since time immemorial.
Shea Uhoy, that is all.
This really started about 3 years before that. In our office, the council and whoever knew that it was a possibility came and used our conference room about 1971, maybe 1970, to talk about it, talk about the possibilities. They decided they wanted to do it, but they had to put it to a vote of the people. And the people voted it slightly down. People voted a little over 50% down. But the council was so convinced, so they went ahead with it. And thank goodness they did, because it just kind of made Spokane.
Those personal stories, how we as people connect to those moments, is something that I think is personally very important. History is not just about what happened, it's about why and what it means to other people, what it means to us, what it means to our families, what it means to the community. Everybody has a story about Expo that went to Expo. I mean, even I have stories and I never went to Expo. But, you know, it's the place where people met their spouses. It's the place where they got their first job. It's the place where they tasted borscht for the first time and discovered that they love beets. It's this space where everyone has some sort of experience or moment. There are all kinds of stories, and these memories are how we connect to the past.
Food and music, they unite people and they bring energy and flavor to whatever the gathering. That certainly was true at the World's Fair here in Spokane in 1974. And while the downtown area was transformed for hundreds of exhibits, it also became a venue for world-class entertainment. And as we listen to the stories of people who were there or people who wish they were there, you could almost still hear those sweet notes.
World's Fair 74.
I found a record and I was like, I need to know. I didn't have a record player even. And I had to go figure it out. I ended up taking it to my parents' house and we all listened to it together.
The world will be on display on the Spokane River shore.
This is Dale sings songs of the fair city. The front is Expo 74, the A side.
Getting ready for the World's Fair, Expo 74.
Another record that was made specifically for the fair was from Bob Bellows, who was really more of a crooner.
But you can, yes you can, Spokane.
There's a part, that's my favorite part, where it's doing an instrumental break and then he says,
Don't wanna boast, Spokane's the most.
Thank you. That's great. Even though he's not from here, he has this genuine enthusiasm. And he actually came to the fair, as did Dale. My family moved to Spokane in 1996, and I did not care at all about Expo. But when I moved back here about 2017, I really started to get into our history. I'm a big local history buff. I love Spokane history. One of my interests is Expo 74, which I got into mostly because I found a batch of souvenirs on eBay. They were strange, and I really wanted to understand the context. At the Energy Pavilion, Up With People performed. Find me a more 70s thing than Up With People. This was associated with the Philippines Pavilion. This is a record from the Expo for singers, the Spokane Mormon Expo Choir. I started researching what each of these pieces was, and the more I dug, the more interesting it was. I feel like every piece that I pull on with Expo, I find something else that's really cool.
My lilac city, Spokane.
Oh, good heavens. Liberace came to Spokane for a full week in the Opera House, and sold out every single one of his concerts. And by doing that, that opened the doors for other people, like the Carpenters, like the Modern Jazz Quartet, I don't know who, Margot Fontaine and the London Ballet, and others, to simply decide, okay, well, maybe we have to be there as well.
John Denver. We're big fans in my house, so I guess not surprised by it, but he had star power.
Oh, at that point, he was at the height of his career. He could not walk into a crowded room or into any kind of room without having everyone want to be a part of his discussion. And he had to be at the Coliseum for a sound check in the middle of the afternoon. But at about 1 o'clock, he said, you know, I'm available. I would love to see some parts of the World's Fair. We got in the back door of the World's Fair, and a couple of young ladies saw him and wanted to come over and get his autograph. We couldn't get from the gate to the Russian pavilion. We finally got close, and now there were 30 or 40 people. All had kind of joined in the effort to say hello to John Denver.
We've talked a little bit about it, but of course the World's Fair had a theme, and at the time was considered fairly innovative to be talking and focusing on the environment.
When you started digging into the files, what was something you were most excited about?
I think the thing for me was when we think about Expo and we'd hear about it, we never talked about the environmental theme beyond it being the theme. And so for a long time, I kind of just assumed they co-opted the environmental message and didn't do much. But I was really amazed. They did this whole symposia series where they had the best and the brightest minds from around the world writing environmental papers on things that we currently are dealing with today. So climate change, lots of different kinds of talks about urban renewal and ecology, kind of living in an urban environment with nature around it. All of these aspects that we now are kind of incorporating into urban planning or into how we're dealing with environmental issues, they were thinking about and they were promoting and talking about at Expo 74.
All the details from the World's Fair, all those great moments, wonderful vendors, exhibits, and of course, all that entertainment, all of those memories can only live on if you continue to tell the stories. So that's what we're asking you to do. Share your story of Expo 74 by visiting the Museum of Arts and Culture website. They've set it up to take those stories and preserve them for future generations so people can continue to enjoy, learn, and preserve the memories of Expo 74.
Without the World's Fair, I don't know what Spokane would be today.
The city gained immensely because its central district doubled in size and cleaned itself up.
I remember we were the all-American city, and I noticed a lot of people moved here.
It really changed it into something that we could all be really proud of.
Share your stories and become part of the Expo 74 Memory Share collection in the Jolie Ferris Archives at the MAC. Use a QR code or log on to the Expo 74 Memory Share website.